Welcome to the RGLT Economics. In this podcast, I want to focus on the belligerent imbeciles. I want to talk about their MOs, how we could possibly challenge or address them, and finally, what are some of the escalations that are perhaps in the plan that I foresee. Of course, initiated by these imbeciles. Before I start, I want to talk about why I am making today's podcast and what are some of the signs, some of the things that these belligerent imbeciles have already done in the last 3-4 weeks. Well, they have been sending weapons to the war zone, pouring gasoline on the fire, while at the same time they have been warning others of not doing the same to support the other side. Secondly, they have been sanctioning themselves, cutting themselves off of essential energy, raw material, and food supplies. Thirdly, they have been essentially initiated a default on their banking obligations, in their financial obligations, by seizing the assets of a foreign central bank. That really has created triggered a series of response from the rest of the world, who start to question in earnest the credibility of their financial systems. And now they have been talking about defaulting on their debt obligations on specifically China. And that obviously is going to be a further escalation in terms of in terms of dismantling or demolishing the credibility of the financial systems. And finally, of course, they have been hell-bent on starting World War III, while at the same time, of course, talking about that the war, if it started, must be started by the other side. It really does not matter who starts World War III. If you don't actively prevent it, if you seek to have it, whether it is the other side or yourself that starts it directly, you are the one that's going to suffer, and you are the one that have backed to suffer. But anyway, let's start today's podcast. First, I want to talk about the MOs. I want to make this quick, so I'm just going through a list of bullet points that I've made on a piece of paper. I've found roughly 6 MOs or 6 characteristics of these belligerent imbeciles. First is their postmodernist discourse. The idea is that there is no absolute truth, right? The truth is affected by how you construct the reality. And to put it more straightforwardly or more bluntly, what these imbeciles excel at is to lie against well-faced against the facts, right? They are never afraid of facts when they lie. And this, of course, is most evident, not just, of course, most evident in the last few days and weeks, but but if we look at the political careers of some of the politicians, some of these belligerent imbeciles, in particular BJ, I'm talking about the guy from the so-called Great Britain, and if we look at SM, the fella from Down Under, these guys have a habit of lying against facts. Secondly, these belligerent imbeciles like to hold a moral pitch, right? They always take the moral high ground, even when doing evil deeds. Even when they are, let's say, for example, if they are authoritarian, they will say that they are actually democratic and implementing certain policies for the sake of freedom, and people who oppose them, those are the people who are fascists, neo-Nazis, or perhaps the goons of certain foreign nations. They always say this when they are the ones that are obviously being authoritarian. But when they are not being obviously authoritarian, they will say, hey, our side is absolutely freedom and democracy. The opposite side, authoritarianism and autocracy. Right? So that is even when, and usually when, the two sides are really pot and kettle, not really much difference, or even when they themselves are being less democratic, less free, and more authoritarian. The third MO or characteristic feature is that they like to make thinly veiled threats. They like to say that if you don't do, of course it's all for freedom. You can do it, right? I don't interfere in. When they're talking about another country, talking to another country, they say we respect sovereignty. We don't interfere in your political affairs, in your policy making. But if you don't do this and that, the consequences will be severe, right? And of course, domestically, they will say, obviously, this is land of the free. We have you can do whatever you choose, but if you don't do what I say, I'm going to make it impossible for you to make a living. I'm going to make it impossible for you to enjoy certain essential services. I'm going to make life hell for you. But of course, you are perfectly free to do what I want you to do. Fourthly, they want to make some what I would call un-cunning deceits or schemes. They have, you see, there are a lot of conspiracy theories that have been floating around in recent decades. Ever since I think the introduction or the rise of the popularity of the internet, there have been a lot of conspiracy theories. Most of them are not true, and I think this does not mean that there aren't a lot of conspiracies. There are a lot of conspiracies, but these belligerent imbeciles are not so cunning that their schemes or deceits are that complex. If you have to come up with a very convoluted theory to explain their motives, you are wrong. These belligerent imbeciles scheme or deceive mostly to do just one of two things: either to grab power or to make money. And it's always quite straightforward. And this leads us to the fifth point, which is that these belligerent imbeciles are financially corrupt. They like to take political contributions. They like to help their children or spouse to acquire, essential or well remunerated positions in high places in countries that they are in control of, that they have full control of. Right, so that's basically a financial corruption. And finally, they also, I believe, that they lack real commitment or courage. They don't really have a belief system. They don't. There are some people who are talking about some conspiracies about some people doing certain, these belligerent imbeciles in particular, in fact, implementing policies that are intentionally derailing the Western economy or to undermine democracy, etc., etc. I do not think so. I think these people don't have the belief that they want to build, quote unquote, a new order. I don't think so. I personally, I think what they want is simply to seize more power and to make more money. While at the same time, these guys, because they don't have courage, they are easily swayed. If you push them hard, they will go to a different direction. But again, it's always about power and money. And one point that I want to make, I think this point has eluded me. Well, anyway, there is a very important point that I wanted to make, but I'm sorry, I forgot just at this right moment. I didn't put it down on a piece of paper. So anyway, let's move on to the next section, because those are the 6 MOs. It was just that's an important point that I wanted to make on the last one. But anyways, maybe I will add it in the comment section if I find it, if I realize what it is in the coming days. Now let's move on to the second part, which is how we could possibly challenge them. In this section, first I will list 4 points, which I have jotted down on a piece of paper, and then I will give a couple of examples. But I want to warn people, if you are the type that loves CNN or DNC, I think you should, at this point, give me a like and subscribe and just stop watching or stop listening. But, if you are fine with some reality and maybe some unpopular opinions, then we can proceed with this section, and particularly with a couple of examples. So how to address them? I think number 1, there are 4 points, as I said. Number 1 is to stick to the facts. Right? Those guys, they want to talk about morality. They want to talk about, they want to lie, a la postmodernism. It was social, I think it's, what is it called? Social constructivism? Anyway, stick to facts, stick to the facts, stick to the truth. Do not attempt to actually make up lies. Make up false stories, false narratives, because this truth, compared to these postmodernist discourse, truth has this, as someone has said, a lot of people have said, truth has this nasty habit of always turning itself up and turning the, how to say, disclosing those postmodernist discourse as lies, right? Facts are the facts. This is the first thing. Second is to call their bluffs. When they are making thinly veiled threats, well, you do whatever that is in your interest, in your plan to do. You do whatever that is good for you, that is good for your conscience. Don't care what these guys are threatening, right? And if they want to, if they act, what you need to do is to act and act disproportionately. You need to react disproportionately. Call their bluffs, and you need to react. And thirdly, you need to cut them off financially, and this, I think, really means de-dollarization. Lastly, you need to be prepared. You need to be prepared to use kinetic means in response, right? If the belligerent imbeciles pushes the sanction ladder to the last run, then it perhaps is already time to react in kinetically. So these are the four ways that I think countries should react to these belligerent imbeciles. I want to give two examples, and I want to explain them in very short detail. I'll try to keep it concise. But I want to preface this by saying that this is completely just not even my personal view. Let's say this is a view that I personally condemn. Okay? Before you want to condemn these views, I'm going to condemn these views. But I want to present to you these views because I think these are the methods that would have prevented more escalations and could have prevented the current military conflict, the current armed conflict, which actually is a much larger tragedy, much worse. The first one is with regards to the HMS Defender. If you remember, last summer, I think, HMS Defender went very close to Sevastopol in Crimea, and the idea, of course, was to provoke the Russian Navy, and it was to pose to virtual signal, where at the same time this basically is their thinly veiled threats, right? But I think they lacked commitment and courage. I don't want to say. I want to condemn the view. But the view is such that if the Russians had sunk HMS Defender at that time, it can be argued that the Anglo-Americans would not have dared further escalations in Ukraine. I think there would not have been today's incidents, today's conflict. I think the Minsk agreement, the Minsk Accords, will be implemented. The mistake, I think, that the Russians made. No, I don't think I condemn the view. But this view is that if the Russians had sunk HMS Defender at that time, the Brits would have crawled to their daddy, JB, in the White House, and so BJ to JB in the White House, and would have cried for. There will be a lot of publications in such journals as Financial Times and The Guardian. But I think there will not be any escalations further. In fact, I think they would back off from the Ukraine. No, I don't think. I condemn the view. And then the second is with HMS Richmond. HMS Richmond went to the Taiwan Strait last year, and it's really similar. I think it had the Chinese People's Liberation Army Navy. If they had sunk this, essentially it's an enemy vessel that trespassed in your territorial waters. It's an undeclared invasion. You sink it, and of course you sink it, but at the same time you save everyone. You make sure nobody dies, right? Nobody dies. And of course this view is also to be condemned, right? Before you condemn it, I condemn it. That would have changed the course perhaps even of the election that happened no, I think maybe the election in Taiwan already happened. But anyway, it would have changed the political discourse in Taiwan, I think. Now, I don't think, this view says that perhaps it is. Now, thirdly, let's go to the future escalations. What I see are some of the escalations that will happen, and that they are ranked in an order of likelihood and also of proximity. The ones that I talk first are the ones that are more likely and perhaps are quite soon. Number one is, of course, we see that proxy war is all but a reality in Ukraine, in Eastern Europe, let's say. And there are some chatters that some of the former Warsaw Pact nations, militaries, are prepared to enter the war or perhaps to send expeditionary forces in Ukraine or in the combat zone, let's say. And that, of course, is going to be exactly in the interest, in the interest of the belligerent imbeciles, how exactly what they wish. Right? They will be able to sell weapons. They will be able to further lock those countries in, while at the same time they will be pulling the strings without, of course, sending the US or British armies directly into the fight. And I think this is all a plan to make Ukraine, Syria, or perhaps Iraq for Russia, and the result, it's unpredictable. But I think one thing that is really predictable is that there will be a large number of moderate rebels in Eastern Europe, in Eastern and Central Europe, from the Elbe, from what is the neighbor? What is the river? From the Rhine to Brest, from the Rhine to Brest, from the Baltic to maybe to the Alps, to Danube. But we're going to see that this area will be filled with moderate rebels, and the results will be predictable. Secondly, we'll see that perhaps these belligerent imbeciles would like to sanction China even further. They have already started this week. I think this will be much faster. The escalations will be much faster than they did with Russia. And, we will see how exactly this will play out. It is possible indeed for them to default on their debts on China, and this will be, of course, packaged as part of a sanction. But to everyone, this will be clearly viewed as a default, and this will be the first time that the federal government of the United States defaulted on not technically, but truthfully, fully defaulted on its obligations. Thirdly, I think perhaps that they may open a third front around in the Middle East. This is contingent on how Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and India, perhaps to a certain degree also Iran and Pakistan, act in the coming months. And we could see that they may want to open a third front, first starting with sanctions, and then perhaps also with some proxy action. But I think this front is going to be more difficult for them to start, because I don't see them having a real ally in that region. There is Israel, but I don't think Israel is foolish enough to do that. I think these imbeciles could do the beating of Israel, but I doubt that Israel would do the beating of these imbeciles, because the Israelis are. Now, I have good, deep respect for the Israelis. They are very wise. They're very smart. Now, their domestic policy may be bad and maybe racist, segregationist, however you call it. But I think they are not anything. If anything, they're not stupid. So lastly, I think this is the big one, which is perhaps in this fall, there may be a push in Taiwan for independence. Yeah, that's basically their, I would say that's their trump card. They think that that's their trump card. Now, how would they react? How could the targeted countries react? I can provide just for the second and the last one. Because for the proxy war, I think, okay, let me just run them down. The first one, the proxy war. I think Russia made a huge strategic mistake. I think this strategic mistake will lead to an outcome that is contrary to their original plans. They went in Ukraine very, very soft. They thought that they want to preserve the infrastructure. They want to preserve even part of the political system, not the highest level, but at local level, they want to preserve the system. And they just want to force Ukraine into some type of negotiations in order to demilitarize the country and to force it to commit to neutrality. I think this is a big strategic mistake. It has turned out to be a big strategic mistake. Now, I don't think I condemn the view, but the good way, the way that could potentially be superior strategically would have been for them to do a really mobile war that directly targets Kiev, foregoing all the other parts, right? Don't go in from Crimea, don't go in from the Kharkov region. Just hold the line on the east, primarily using the helping with the separatist republics, while at the same time focus on just blitzing Kiev. And an analogy that this would have would be the Franco-Prussian War in the 1860s, where the Prussians quickly seized Paris and basically forced a treaty. In that treaty, of course, they got Alsace, and they created an environment that made German unification possible. And also, the second example would be during the Second World War. Again, the Germans, they blitzed again to Paris. They forced the collapse of the French government, and in fact, they were able to keep the political system. Right? If you are able to just basically quickly cut off the head of let's say the UA, Russia would have been able to quickly stop this war. This was possible because the majority of the most combat-ready forces, the elitist forces of Ukraine, were on the eastern side. And they were not expecting any conflict or any, let's just call it invasion to Ukraine. And a quick blitz to seize Kiev could have been achieved in just 2-3 days, and this would have forced a collapse of the government while preserving the political system and forcing it to come to the negotiation table and get a peace treaty. So this could have been a conflict that ended very quickly, and that also meant, of course, that when you go in fast and you want to do it fast, you need to use force where necessary. In the end, in the long run, it is a way to save casualties. You don't have this. Currently, I think this is not so much a mobile warfare; it's more like a siege warfare, and that is going to be a huge attritions. And I think this is going to be very costly, and it's going to be negative to Russia as well, and I think to Ukraine severely. The second thing I talk about, which is U.S. sanctions on China. This again is a view that I condemn, right? I condemn it. But this view says that it is, as a realist, you will understand that at some point, sooner or later, and in fact sooner rather than later, the United States will default on its debt obligations on China, unless the current regime is replaced by one that is sane. But even if JB is displaced, the next in line is looking to be even more radical and even more belligerent. I think it's going to be even worse. So if you accept this reality, the rational thing to do is to dump US all the bonds, and to sell off dollar-denominated assets, American-based assets, and at some point, maybe not immediately, because we don't need to, or you don't turn all the action immediately to 10, right? But in some point in the future, perhaps also get ready to stop using the USD for trade, accepting that this is going to be a huge blow to your country's economy, but also accepting the failure, and I must say that there's no other way to put it, the failure in previous decades to build an economy that is self-sufficient, that does not rely upon foreign consumptions and export. Right? You can have export when you have high levels of productivity, but you cannot build an economy that solely depends upon export. Bad examples include Argentina, which was one of the richest countries in the world just 100 years ago. Because of its heavy reliance on export, particularly to America, it suffered greatly from the Great Depression, and it never recovered. So do not do that, right? So that's of course hindsight. We can't do much now. That's the second part. And the third part about the third front in the Middle East. Well, there's not much I can say. If that happens, maybe I will chime in. And finally, about the Taiwan Strait. Here, I think I don't have a view that I cannot condemn. I condemn the following view. I condemn the following. It's not a suggestion, right? It's absolutely not a suggestion. But it's something that everyone should condemn. And if you're not condemned, you're not right. But let me just say this. That this view says that if Taiwan declares independence How should China react? China should first stick to rhetorics. This is not the time to start a war, but to start rhetorics. If you don't achieve the desired result, and I'm going to talk about what the desired result is, you don't achieve the desired result, you escalate, you then sanction Taiwan, and eventually you blockade Taiwan. The desired result is to have US carrier task forces in the Taiwan Strait. How many? You want to have as many of the US carrier task force there as possible. And this view is absolutely to be condemned. But this view suggests that you then proceed to sink as many as possible, these carrier task forces. The carriers that enter this range, doesn't matter, you empty all your missile arsenal, whether you have hypersonic, if you have hypersonic, use them all, if necessary. If you have ballistic, use them. If you don't have any, use torpedo, whatever you use. The goal is to call the bluff, right? The goal is to call the bluff. Of course, you make sure that even though you sink the task forces, you make sure that nobody dies, right? Nobody is going to die from this, right? You do this, and this view holds that this is going to trigger a political turmoil in the United States. But in the end, I don't think, this view thinks that that sane voices in America would not launch a nuclear strike. They would not actually escalate militarily. This view holds that these guys, these belligerent imbeciles, lack the courage. And with the carrier task forces, 2, 3, 4 carriers down, Taiwan would actually enter political discussions, and political resolution to this problem will be resolved. I do not think that is necessary. No, it's not. I don't think this view holds that it's not necessary to launch any quote-unquote invasion of the island. All you have to do is to sink some carrier task forces. All right, so I think I have been a little bit, it's a little bit difficult in today's podcast for me to not, be too provocative. And of course, there are some ideas, some views that I have mentioned in today's podcast. I repeatedly say that these are to be condemned. And of course, I condemn them before you condemn them. All right? But I think these are the realist views. Thank you very much for listening to today's podcast. Obviously, you can find me not just on YouTube, but also on Odyssey and Rumble. If you like this podcast, give me a like and subscribe and share. Thanks and have a great day.